Today we're going to be learning Nedarim Daf Yud Aleph. It's the Daf for Shabbat. We're going to start with the Mishna at the bottom of Yud Amud Bet. The Mishna says, "Haomer lachulin she'ochalach." The important part is lachulin is a combination of two words: la, which is low, not chulin. Chulin is non-sacred items. So not chulin, it's a little bit confusing today because we want to have a lot of double negatives, is korban. Okay, so lachulin equals korban, lik korban. It will be a korban. Anything of yours will be a korban. Lo kasher. These are all languages of velo dechi, not pure or not kosher, or lo tahol, or not, right? It says just tahor, but it means lo dechi or lo tahol. Tameh, notar, upigul. These are all things that are forbidden to eat. So, asul, you're basically declaring this item as something that's forbidden. All those things, which we learned in yesterday's class, I'm not going to go into all the details again. They're all languages that connect to sacrifices. Even if you make a neder in a language that relates to anything having to do with the korbanot, whether it's any of the utensils they use for the sacrifices, including all these languages we said, even if you didn't use the language of a korban, a sacrifice, that basically forbade the item for you like a korban. This is what we call hatpasa. I connected my, or whatever it is, this item or items or anything I eat from you, for example, all your stuff, I'm comparing matpis, I'm connecting it to something that's forbidden, which is like a korban. So that's a korban. So even if I say, for example, like Jerusalem, since Jerusalem is the place where the korbanot were sacrificed, where the sacrifices were brought, that's forbidden. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees and says, no, one of these is different from all the rest. Jerusalem has all sorts of connotations. If I say to you Jerusalem, you don't necessarily think of sacrifices. So therefore, Yerushalayim doesn't count. Soon we're going to understand this mission a bit of a different way, but right now that's how we understand it. To which the Gemara says, starting at the top of Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Savruha, they read this mission the way I told you, that my lachulin, lo chulin lahave ela korban. Lachulin means it's not chulin, which means it's korban. So whatever I eat from you will be a korban. Mani matnitin. So who is our Mishnah like? Rabbi Meir. If we're going to say it's like Rabbi Meir, can't be. He doesn't think that if I say a negative, I can infer the positive. Lo chulin I will not be chulin what I'm going to eat from you, which would mean it will be chulin. It will be a korban what I eat from you, right? It won't be chulin. Well, if it's not going to be chulin, what is it going to be? It's going to be a korban. That's if you say, from the negative, you can infer the positive. If I say, this will not be, right? This will not be chulin. What I mean is, it will be korban. Well, that's not something Rabbi Meir holds. So it can't be Rabbi Meir. It's not, because there's a Mishna that says, Rabbi Meir omer, any stipulation in a contract, in an agreement, that's not like the one that was in the Torah of the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuven, who basically didn't want to cross over the Jordan River. They wanted to stay on their side. But they promised, if we go, right, basically it was a promise. If we go into the land and we fight for you, then we'll get our land. If we don't, we won't get our land. Notice they specified both options. So that's because they didn't really need to specify. Could have just said one of them and we could have inferred the other. So from there we learn that Rabbi Meir doesn't think that you can infer the opposite. Okay, so if I say it won't be chulin, which really means it will be a korban, well, Rabbi Meir doesn't hold that way. Ela Rabbi Yehuda, so it must be the person who holds from the negative you can infer the positive, which is Rabbi Yehuda. Well, you're going to have a problem with that too. Because I'm a seifa, our Mishnah clearly can't be Rabbi Yehuda, the tana, first tana in our Mishnah, because the end of our Mishnah ends with Rabbi Yehuda omer, Yerushalayim lo amar klum. If you say Jerusalem, you didn't mean anything. Midaseifa Rabbi Yehuda, reishalav Rabbi Yehuda. It's clear Rabbi Yehuda only appears at the end of our Mishnah, disagreeing with the first tana. So that means that the beginning part can't be Rabbi Yehuda. Therefore, the Mishnah says, okay, so kula Rabbi Yehuda. Here's our answer. You misread the Mishnah. Our entire Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The hachi katani, what it means to say is the following. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yerushalayim lo amar klum. Now notice the language of Rabbi Yehuda. He says if you say Yerushalayim, you didn't say anything. What did the Tanakh say? He never said if you say Yerushalayim. He said if you say Ki Yerushalayim, it's forbidden. So they were distinguishing now between Ki Yerushalayim and Yerushalayim. As long as you said Ki Yerushalayim, even Rabbi Yehuda thinks it works. What Rabbi Yehuda at the end of the Mishna is coming to say is only if you say Yerushalayim. If you just say Yerushalayim Ashocha Lecha, anything I eat from you, Yerushalayim, and you don't say like Jerusalem, then it doesn't mean anything. If you say Ki Yerushalayim, then it works. So basically, we read the Mishna as the following. Rabbi Yehuda is talking the whole time, and he basically says lachulin Ashocha Lecha is forbidden because we do say from the negative you can infer the positive. And then when it says Ki Yerushalayim, he's specifically Ki Yerushalayim, but not if you just said the words Yerushalayim, it wouldn't work. To which the Gemara questions that as well. V'chiyama Ki Yerushalayim Rabbi Yehuda mi mitzah. Is it really forbidden, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if you say the words Ki Yerushalayim? V'hatanya, it says in a different braita explicitly that Rabbi Yehuda doesn't think it works. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Ha'omer Ki Yerushalayim lo amar klum. If you said Ki Yerushalayim, you didn't say anything. Unless you're talking about something that's sacrificed in Jerusalem. The word Jerusalem connotes so many different things to so many different people. Not necessarily only sacrifices, right? Nowadays, for sure it doesn't. But maybe in the days when they sacrificed things, maybe more so, or they were closer to the destruction of the temple. But even so, it could be talking about the stones in Jerusalem. It could be talking about the trees in Jerusalem. It could be talking about anything in Jerusalem. So therefore, it seems like Rabbi Yehuda really doesn't hold like the Tanakh in our Mishna. So again, we're stuck. You can't say the Mishna is Rabbi Yehuda and you can't say it's Rabbi Meir, well then it goes like nobody. To which the Gemara is going to answer, Kula Rabbi Yehudi, Utlei Tanai, Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. It really is Rabbi Yehuda, the entire Mishnah. There's a debate about what Rabbi Yehuda held regarding Yerushalayim, or Ki Yerushalayim. So the tana of our Mishnah thinks if you say Ki Yerushalayim, you didn't say it actually works, only Jerusalem by itself doesn't work. But the tana of the braita thought that Rabbi Yehuda held that even Ki Yerushalayim doesn't work. And therefore, there was this debate about what Rabbi Yehuda himself held. So in one Mishnah, he appears one way, and a braita he appears differently, and that's okay. We can live with that, because sometimes there's debates about what Tanaim said, and they appear in different sources saying different things. So that's our resolution to that problem. This whole section of Amud Aleph, which we now finish, moving on to Amud Bet, that whole section was all about who the Mishnah follows. It must follow Rabbi Yehuda, because the Mishnah assumes this concept of michlala v'tashumeyahen. You say lo chulin, what we can infer from there is korban, okay, that it will be a korban and it will be forbidden. That Rabbi Meir wouldn't hold by. Now we get to a new braita. We're going to do a similar thing, which is try to figure out, we're going to assume it's Rabbi Meir, because it's not going to hold by michlala v'tashumeyahen. And then we're going to struggle with the second part because it doesn't seem to match some other opinion of Rabbi Meir. Chulin, ha-chulin, ki-chulin. Other languages, right? You say chulin, the chulin, or like chulin, ben she'ochal lecha, uben shelo ochal lecha, whatever you add to one of those three words, and you say chulin, what I eat from you, or chulin, what I don't eat from you. Either which way you say it, mutal. Why is that? Theoretically, you could say if I say chulin, what I won't eat from you, the inverse of that is it will be korban, what I do eat from you, and it would be forbidden. So this is going to prove that this must be Rabbi Meir, right? Because he says it's permitted if you said chulin, remember, chulin means non-sacred. Chulin, what I won't eat from you, which seems to imply, what I will eat from you will be a sacrifice and will be forbidden. But yet, the braita says it's permitted. The second part of this braita is going to actually be a problem with Rabbi Meir, with something he says somewhere else, so it'll take us a little while till we get there. Lachulin she'ochal lecha asur. If you say not chulin, what I eat from you, you'll be forbidden. Lachulin means sacrifice. Lachulin lo ochal lecha mutar. But if you say lachulin, what I won't eat from you, it's permitted. So now they're going to come up with their question. Reishamane, Rabbi Meir, so that already we explained. The first part must be, since we don't hold from what we say one way, we can infer the opposite, the inverse. So if you say chulin, what I won't eat from you is chulin, then we can't infer from there what I will eat from you is a korban and is forbidden. That's because we hold like Rabbi Meir and we don't infer things. But this last line of the braita, lachulin lo ochalacha mutal, is going to be a problem. Why? So we're going to wait and see. There's another Mishnah. This is going to be a little complicated, a few stages. We'll go through them. Hopefully it'll be clear. The Mishnah on Daf Yud Gimel says the following. La korban lo ochalacha. Okay. Which la korban we're going to assume is not a korban, which means chulin, basically. Lo ochalacha, what I won't eat from you. Rabbi Meir osir. Rabbi Meir forbids. Mikashelan. Say, I don't understand. Why would you forbid? You don't hold, we hold by the inverse. So la korban means it's not a korban what I won't eat from you, which seems to imply it will be a korban what I do eat from you, which means any of your food is forbidden to me. And that's why it should be forbidden. That goes against what Rabbi Meir says. It goes against Rabbi Meir's whole approach. So it can't possibly be that's what the Mishnah means. Here comes the important part. Rabbi Abba, why is Rabbi Meir forbid? For a different reason. He understands this line differently than we thought. It's like he said, we're going to change two things here. Lit korban instead of la korban. La korban is a combination of lo korban. That's what we thought it meant. Now we're going to say it's lit korban. We're going to change what we call a patach, a straight line underneath the word, which is an a sound, to a shva, two dots, which means lit korban. It is a korban. Now, what's the problem? Well, it is a korban what I won't eat from you. Well, then what's going to be forbidden? That's why can't I eat from you? I said what I won't eat from you is a korban. So they changed the second part as well. Le korban yehe. It will be a korban is the whole first part. Yehe. And then the first part is actually referring to all your stuff will be for me a korban. And the lo ochalacha is not what it will apply to. It's what are the ramifications of what I'm saying. Lefichach, therefore, lo ochalacha, therefore I can't eat anything of yours. So they changed this Mishnah entirely. Why is that important to our purposes? Because if we're saying that Rabbi Meir understands the phrase le korban, lo ochalacha means le korban it will be, and therefore, this is the key part, and therefore I will not eat from you. Hachanami, you should say the same thing here. What did they say by us? Lachulin lo ochalacha. It's the same language. We're going to ignore the changing of the patach to the shvar for right now. We're going to assume lachulin stays with its original understanding, not chulin. But we're going to change is hachinami hachikamarale. What he means to say is lo chulin lahave. This is not chulin. Lefichach lo ochalacha. Therefore, I won't eat it. Okay? It's not chulin, and therefore I won't eat from you. So now, according to this, Rabbi Meir should forbid this language, right? La chulin, lo ochalacha means it's not chulin, meaning it's korban, and therefore I won't eat from you, which would sound like it would be a language that Rabbi Meir would forbid. And Rabbi Meir actually permits it. So now we have to explain. Hi, tana savalaka Rabbi Meir b'chada upaligale b'chad. Rabbi Meir must hold like one tana. The tana of this braita holds like Rabbi Meir on one issue, on the michlal avata shomei ahen, that we don't hold that way, and that's the beginning part, that you can't take a statement, chulin, what I won't eat from you, means korban, what I will eat from you. We don't make that inverse statement. But lachulin is not chulin, which means korban, and therefore I won't eat from you means this is korban, and therefore I won't eat any of your stuff. That should be asur, but for that he doesn't hold like Rabbi Meir. In other words, what we saw like Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah, la korban, lo ochalacha will be asur. He says, no, that language doesn't connote forbidding. That language connotes la korban, right? It will be a korban, whether you say le or la, it doesn't really matter. Masha lo chalacha doesn't really mean anything because you're only talking about what I don't eat. And you don't understand it as, therefore I won't eat from your stuff. What it means is what I won't eat from you, which means not your stuff I'm referring to, which wouldn't be a problem. So if you hold like Rabbi Meir there, that we change the meaning of that, again, what does it mean we change the meaning? We assume what you meant was Likorban is referring to all your stuff already. And the second part is not referring to what are we referring to. It's just saying, what are the ramifications of what I'm going to do? Therefore, I can't eat anything from you. We just don't hold like Rabbi Meir on that. We don't read it that way. In which case, we're back to lachulin is not chulin, what I won't eat from you, which would then be a meaningless statement because, first of all, you're referring to stuff that you're not even going to eat. So what does it even mean? It doesn't really mean anything, especially if you won't go and try to refer something else from it, then there's nothing to say. So it's a meaningless statement. So basically what we tried to say, the first answer that we have, because we have two answers to this question, is, let's read it inside. This tana holds like Rabbi Meir in one thing, but disagrees with him about the other. So again, the reisha, the first part of the braita, holds like Rabbi Meir about the first thing, and that's why chulin shelo halacha will be a meaningless statement and won't be valid because we can't infer from there korban what I will eat from you. But but he disagrees about the korban issue. That next Mishna or the later Mishna on Daf Yud Gimel, where it says the korban lo halacha is asul. He thinks the korban lo halacha is mutar, and therefore lachulin, which means korban sho halacha, will also be mutar according to this tana because he doesn't hold like Rabbi Meir on that issue. That was the first answer. Rav Ashi Amal, he gives what I think is maybe a more obvious answer, which is, if you remember in the korban, Rabbi Abba changed two things. He changed la korban to li korban, that it is a korban. And he changed shelo halacha to therefore I won't eat from you. So Rav Ashi says, Hada Amar lachulin. Change lachulin to lachulin. And then it will be just like the reisha really, which is lachulin lo ochalacha is mutar. Why? Because lachulin, what I won't eat from you, is permitted. Why? Because what does it mean really? Even if it means lachulin, this will be chulin. This will be chulin, means it's permitted. So even if you say lefichach lo-ochalacha, that doesn't mean anything. I can't eat your stuff because it's chulin. Of course I can eat your stuff if it's chulin. So if we change that, then it even fits in with Rabbi Meir because lachulin is not lachulin, it's in fact lichulin, just like la korban was likorban. And then we don't even have a question. Bahada Amar, this line is a little bit harder to understand because it's not clear what the ha is. And there, somewhere else, to Amar lo chulin, you should take out the lamed there. Lo chulin to mashma lo lehavi chulin ela kekorban. Elsewhere, la means lo, but here it doesn't. So elsewhere, where they refer to maybe our Mishna, or maybe they're referring really to Rabbi Abba, who basically said li korban yehei lepichach lo ochalacha, and then tried to say, then you should. And when the Gemara, it's really the suggestion of the Gemara, where Rabbi Abba took it, Rabbi Abba's suggestion, and said, therefore, by us. Lo chulin yehei, there they understood it as if it had a patach, as if it had a line underneath that meant low. But where our explanation, in order to explain it, we're going to say it's really lit and not la, and therefore there's really no question because this isn't a language of forbidding because it's just like the first part, which is chulin ha chulin kichulin. Okay, the problem is la chulin she'ochalacha is asul, but there. You have to explain it some other way. That line doesn't fit in exactly as well with this interpretation. Maybe there you'd have to say it's lachulin, okay, that it's korban, what I will eat from you, that you'll be forbidden. Okay, now we're moving on to the next section. We're going to have one question, and with that, we're going to end our class today. Tahor v'tamei notar pigul asur. If you say something is not tahor, or you say it's tamei, it's impure, or you say it's notar, it's left over, it's pigul, all those things are forbidden, so it's going to be forbidden. By Rami Bar Hama. Rami Bar Hama asked the following question. Hare alai kibasar zivchei shlamim la'achar zrikat tamim mahu. First, we have to understand what all this means. If you say, this will be to me like the meat of a peace offering after the blood is sprinkled. Okay, what does that mean? Peace offering is something that is forbidden in the beginning until you do the zrikat dam. All of it is sanctified, right? You sanctify an animal for the korban. It's all forbidden. But after you sprinkle the blood, it's now permitted. Some parts have to be burnt on the altar, but the other parts can already be permitted to eat. So after the blood is sprinkled on the altar, the blood from the sacrifice, you're allowed to eat the meat. So if I say this is forbidden to me, or I say this food is to me like the meat after the blood is sprinkled, what is the halacha? To which the Gemara says, what kind of crazy question is this? If you said exactly in that language, clearly, basar zevach shlamim is permitted after you sprinkle the blood. So, of course, He's saying this is permitted to me and not this is forbidden to me. To which the Gemara answers, the question is like this. He has a piece of meat in front of him, right in front of him, sitting there. And the blood was sprinkled already for that piece of meat. So it's permitted. And then he has something, any item, it could be another piece of meat, it could be a piece of bread, a loaf of bread, it could be anything that's sitting right next to him. This is what we call hatpasa. He says, this is like that. But now the question is, theoretically, this should be permitted because this is like that. Well, that's permitted because blood has already been sprinkled on the altar, and therefore I can eat the meat. So what's the question? Well, they say the following, ma, bi'ikaro kamat piece. If you said the language like meat after the blood is sprinkled, obviously you mean heter. But if you point to this piece of meat and say, I want this piece of meat to be like that piece of meat, do we say bi'ikaro kamat piece? Do we say that what we mean is that meat the way it was originally when it was sanctified? Oh, behetera kamat piece. Or are we saying, or like it is in its present state, which is permitted? So that's really the question. And we're not going to really get started with the answer today. We'll leave it for next class. We don't really get it too much on this stuff. But one thing you will see is that Rava says, Tashma, no tarupigel, and he quotes our Mishna and those examples of no tarupigel as an attempt to get to an answer. So we'll get to that in tomorrow's class. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. See you on Sunday.